Welcome to Warping Fist.
Flight, heat vision, super speed, super strength, freezing breath, and X-ray vision.
Unfortunately, Superman has never had a good legacy when it comes to gaming. When you look at a majority of his games released over the decades, most of them are mediocre or just downright bad. The reason why Superman games have never reached their full potential is both due to limited hardware, restricting the types of content developers can include, resulting in Superman not feeling as powerful as he should be. And second is time constraints, as most Superman games were tie-ins that were unfortunately rushed in order to reach a deadline. Despite the disappointing games Superman has received over the years, there's a chance we could have had something special. Back in 2013, Warner Brothers was actively developing a Superman game, and there was many pitches from different studios like Warner Brothers Montreal and even Rocksteady Games. Unfortunately, the game was never greenlit, with Rocksteady and WB Montreal eventually moving on to different projects. So what happened to this unmade Superman game, and why was it cancelled in the end? In 2013, after the success of Batman Arkham Origins, Warner Brothers became interested in expanding their lineup of DC games. Warner Brothers, in a bid to find their next big gaming series, would request for many creatives to pitch a Superman game. One of these creatives would task an artist to create a series of concept art for this potential game. Now, not much is known about this early Superman game, but what we can gather is that it was meant to be open world and would have featured some of Superman's iconic villains like Brainiac, Doomsday, Metallo, Lex Luthor, Darkseid, and Parasite. Now, by looking at the concept art, it's clear that this game was aiming for many large and elaborate set pieces and would have likely included scripted sequences. Now, for unknown reasons, this game would ultimately be cancelled and WB would move on to a different pitch. Warner Brothers Montreal, the developers of the underrated Batman Arkham Origins, would also come in to pitch a Superman game, a project they would work on for about a year. The game would be titled Superman Unbound, and as the name suggests, it would have been an adaptation of the animated film and the comic. If you take a look at the early concept art, it's clear that they were yet to nail down Superman's appearance, as there were two different approaches to his design. There were other pieces of concept art for characters like Doomsday, who in this image looks a lot more tame when compared to how he appears in the comics. Doomsday here would have been featured in the opening battle, likely meaning that he was an early game boss fight. Another interesting element of this concept is that Doomsday was supposedly brainwashed. By who exactly? Well, the most likely candidate is Brainiac, who would have been the main villain of the game. Concept art was not the only thing we knew about this game, as there were many other leaks to both help us predict what the gameplay would have been like and just how far this game got into development. According to rumors and leaks, this game would have been primarily set on the bottled city of Kandor, a metropolis-like city from Krypton that was bottled up after Brainiac's invasion. Now, due to the nature of a city such as this means the traversal would have been limited, as there's a set limit and distance Superman can travel. In fact, according to rumors and insider info, the game was less open world in order to organically limit Superman's powers. Since this was Kandor, it's possible that the story would have centered on Superman slowly losing his abilities throughout the course of the story, which is a brilliant way to explain why Superman is not overpowered in the game. According to concept art for the game, aerial combat would have played a part in the game. While very blurry, we can make out Superman fighting flying vehicles, possibly sent by Brainiac. The element of this game that we have the best look at is actually the menus, specifically the menu where players choose skins. On this menu, we see Superman standing and facing the screen, and according to the words beside him, he's wearing the new 52 skin. And if you compare both side by side, then it's clear that this suit was specifically made to look like an almost one-to-one recreation, with even his face looking quite similar. Now this is not very far-fetched, as Batman Arkham City's skins also visibly change the appearance of Batman. Other elements we see is a character description, which possibly changes based on which skin is used, and a powers and abilities section, which showcases Superman's vast array of powers and weaknesses. Now this is just speculation on my part, but it's possible that depending on the skin chosen, Superman's weaknesses and powers change as well. Just like how in Marvel's Spider-Man, skins give you unique powers, not found in other suits. In fact, there was a different menu leak showcasing a different skin, and although the abilities and character descriptions are almost identical, you'll notice 2 additional weaknesses that weren't present on the previous menu. At first, when this menu first leaked, many people believed that it was fake due to both the Comic Sans font used on the text and the almost cheap and amateurish looking menu. However, since this game was a prototype, that may have explained why it looked so put together. Also, the additional menu looked a lot more professional and cemented how the previous image was just an early menu that would have been changed later. Additionally, there was actually a video of the menu screen which showcases Superman moving around, so either someone went above and beyond to fake the menu, or it was actually real. Speaking of animations, around the time these leaks were emerging, a freelancer updated his LinkedIn page to showcase what he'd been working on, and according to the page, he was hired by Game On Studio to troubleshoot and repair 3D animation rigs for an upcoming Superman game. For those wondering, Game On Studio is a mocap and audio company that coincidentally worked on Batman Arkham Origins in the past. Shortly after this was posted, the freelancer would update his page to remove the mentions of a Superman game and his involvement with Game On Studio. A couple of years later, a new piece of Superman concept art drawn by Joel Dos Villegas appeared on his website. The art depicts Superman flying through a very futuristic looking city, especially when you see a train running through a skyscraper. This could be Kandor, but it could also be Metropolis. It's possible that this could have been a visual artwork meant to be in Batman Arkham Knight as a Metropolis advertisement. Eventually, after about a year developing this idea, Warner Brothers Games would reject it. Supposedly, the reason behind the game's cancellation was due to a mandate by Warner Brothers. You see, at the time, Warner requested that all their games had to use the Arkham engine, which was a heavily modified version of Unreal Engine 3. The purpose of this was to save up on development time and to give their games a familiar formula that gamers who were fans of the Arkham games would recognize. The sad news is that this modified engine just did not work for a Superman game, especially when it came to things like flight. Due to being unable to make a Superman game work within the Arkham engine, it would unfortunately be cancelled, and Warner Brothers Montreal would move on to a new project centering around the Suicide Squad. After the game's cancellation, Rocksteady would see it as an opportunity to pitch their own Superman game. The game would have been set after the events of Batman Arkham Knight and would have implemented the destruction system we saw in the game. Due to the many Easter eggs of Superman and Arkham Knight, a Superman game seemed to be the natural progression. Unfortunately, due to unknown reasons, this Superman game would be rejected by Warner Brothers as well, in favor of a live service looter shooter Suicide Squad game.